The story begins not with a moment of violence, but with a moment of intention, a choice made in silence, somewhere far from the eyes of the world. A man unknown to most carries with him a matchbox and a book he believes represents everything he stands against. He doesn't whisper, doesn't hide. Instead, he steps into a public square, raises the book above his head, and sets it aflame. The Koran, sacred to over 1 billion people, begins to burn. Cameras are rolling. Within seconds, the footage is online. The world reacts. In every corner of the internet, people are shouting. Some in rage, others in celebration, many in disbelief. The flames on that book spread not across paper, but across hearts, screens, and conversations. Some call it a protest, others call it a hate crime. But underneath the noise, something more profound is happening. What drives a person to do this? Was it hatred? Was it fear? Was it a desperate scream for attention in a world that no longer listens? The motivations are complex, and like all acts of destruction, it says more about the person holding the match than the object set on fire. Thomas Frey often says, the future doesn't begin when the clock strikes midnight. It begins the moment someone challenges the status quo. This was that moment, not because it was brave, not because it was right, but because it was disruptive. But here's what most people missed. It wasn't the act itself that changed the world. It was what followed. Because what this man didn't know, what no one could predict, was that the real story hadn't even started yet. As the flames flicker and consume the pages, something deeper begins to stir in the hearts of those who witness the act. People across the world are not just reacting to the burning book. They are reacting to the symbol it represents. We humans are creatures of symbols. We build our identities, our cultures, and our societies around them. A flag, a monument, a scripture, they are not just physical objects. They carry meaning that transcends their material form. Symbols have power because they encapsulate collective memory, belief, and emotion. The burning of a symbol like the Koran isn't just a destructive act against paper and ink. It's an attack on the very essence of something sacred to millions. And in that act, we are reminded of something else, the power of symbols to divide, but also to unite. This is where the real power lies. It's not in the act of destruction, but in what it reveals about us, what we choose to defend, how we react, and what we value. Thomas Frey teaches us that in any given moment of chaos, there is always the potential for transformation. That destruction, when faced with the right perspective, can be the precursor to creation. In a future shaped by technology and culture, what will happen when everything, every symbol, every belief, can be easily erased? What will happen when the world is stripped of everything we hold sacred, and we are left to face only the bare essence of our humanity? This is the question we must ask ourselves. When we destroy what others hold dear, are we tearing down the world or simply revealing our own ignorance? Do we know what it means to be human when we tear apart the very foundations of our collective consciousness? And yet, despite the anger and the frustration, one thing is clear. The flames of destruction have not burned the spirit of the Koran itself. It still exists in the hearts of its believers, and in that moment we see that no matter how hard we try, we cannot destroy what resides within the minds and souls of others. We can burn the pages, but we cannot erase the impact they've had in the aftermath. The world doesn't pause, it reacts. Protests erupt, debates grow heated, and the tension is palpable. People lash out in fury, feeling as if their very identities, their beliefs, their history have been desecrated. The flames have sparked a firestorm of emotions, but in that chaos, something unexpected begins to unfold. What was initially seen as a purely destructive act starts to take on a life of its own, becoming something else entirely. In the midst of the uproar, there is one voice that stands out, a Muslim man, not one of the angry mobs, but one who looks upon the burning with something different, compassion, not hatred. He steps forward, not with accusations or threats, but with an invitation, a chance for dialogue, for understanding. What drives someone to do such a thing? He asks not from a place of anger, but from a place of curiosity. Why burn a book instead of engaging with it? His gesture is not one of submission, but of strength. He doesn't add to the noise. Instead, he offers an opportunity to transform the situation. He invites the man who set the book on fire to come, to sit, to talk. This is not about justifying the act, but about recognizing that in every moment of hatred there is a potential for change. The world watches as the man who once burned a symbol now steps into the unknown, a place where judgment is replaced with inquiry, where hatred is met with understanding. This is the beginning of something profound, the idea that perhaps when we face destruction, we should not respond with more destruction. Perhaps the future will belong not to those who escalate conflict, but to those who dare to turn the tide and build something new out of the wreckage. In this moment, we see something that transcends anger. It's the courage to question, the strength to evolve. The future of our world is not written in the heat of the moment, but in the choices we make hours, days, or even years later. The man who burned the Quran, once a symbol of defiance, now finds himself standing at a crossroads. He has entered into a space where the world's anger meets a chance for growth, and in this vulnerable place, he begins to ask himself questions he had never before considered. For the first time, he is not reacting to a world that has hurt him. Instead, he is confronting the hurt he has caused. He visits a mosque not to challenge, but to learn. The very place he once viewed with suspicion now becomes the ground where his curiosity can begin to take root. With every conversation he has, every word he reads, the walls he built around himself start to crumble. He realizes something that most people never truly grasp. The journey from ignorance to wisdom is not linear, but a series of moments where we choose to challenge our preconceived notions. He reads the Quran, not to mock or to prove a point, but with the desire to understand what others hold sacred. In those pages, he begins to see the depth of what he had destroyed. This is the true power of transformation. It's not about erasing the past, it's about understanding it, questioning it, and allowing it to change the way we see the world. Thomas Frey often speaks of a future where we no longer operate on assumption and judgment, but on understanding and connection. In this moment, the man experiences that vision firsthand. He is no longer a figure of protest or destruction, but one of redemption and learning. He finds that the most profound shifts in our lives occur when we stop trying to be right and start trying to understand. This is the turning point. The man realizes that the world isn't black and white. It's filled with complexities and layers that can only be understood when we are open to the stories of others. The future, he now understands, is not about fighting for supremacy, but about learning from one another, even when the differences between us seem insurmountable. As days pass, the man begins to experience a shift that is both subtle and profound. What started as an act of rebellion, driven by anger and misunderstanding, slowly transforms into a mission of redemption. He no longer sees himself as an enemy to the world, but as someone capable of growth, capable of evolving beyond the limitations of his past actions. He stands in front of audiences, speaking not from a place of superiority, but from a place of humility. He acknowledges the pain he caused, the ignorance he once held, and the anger that led him to burn something so sacred. But he also speaks of the journey he has undertaken since then, the conversations, the learning, the healing. He tells them that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about embracing it, understanding it, and allowing it to lead you to a better version of yourself. Thomas Frey often talks about the power of choice, about how every decision we make has the potential to shape not only our future, but the future of the world around us. The man's apology is not a mere act of saving face. It is an example of the most powerful form of leadership, owning your mistakes and using them as a stepping stone to a greater purpose. In his speeches, he doesn't just apologize for burning a book. He shares the insights he's gained from his own transformation. He talks about how we are often quick to judge, to react, to divide, but how true progress comes when we slow down long enough to listen to ourselves, to others, and to the world we share. The world begins to listen, not to the man who once burned a book, but to the man who is now spreading a message of unity, understanding, and growth. His story becomes a symbol of what is possible when we allow ourselves to change, when we choose to turn away from hatred and toward wisdom. The ripple effect of his transformation doesn't stop with him. As he shares his journey, others begin to reflect on their own. A teacher, once filled with the certainty of their beliefs, starts to reevaluate how they teach about religions, no longer presenting them as systems to be defended, but as traditions to be understood. A student inspired by his change decides to study theology, not to win debates, but to seek common ground between different faiths. A country, previously divided by long-standing tensions, begins to foster interfaith dialogues, encouraged by the idea that true strength comes not from uniformity, but from embracing diversity. In the world's greatest transformations, it is often the smallest actions, the quietest moments of change, that create the most profound shifts. When one individual steps forward to take ownership of their past mistakes, it ignites a chain of events that cannot be undone. The world, which was once divided by anger and misunderstanding, begins to heal, not overnight, but steadily through conversation, reflection, and most importantly, the choice to evolve. Thomas Frey often speaks of the future as a place that is not preordained, but one that is shaped by our actions in the present. What this man has done, what each person in the ripple effect has done, is to create a new future, one where redemption is possible, where understanding is valued over judgment, and where the path to peace is paved not by the absence of conflict, but by the presence of compassion. In the end, the act that once seemed like an unbridgeable gap between cultures and ideologies becomes the very bridge that unites them. The future of humanity is not determined by the fires we light, but by the ashes we choose to rise from. And as this man stands at the heart of that transformation, he realizes something fundamental. The greatest revolution doesn't come from destroying what we fear, it comes from building what we can all embrace together.